Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different, but honestly, it's pretty fascinating. We are going to dissect the foundational DNA of a nonprofit organization called the Instituto Vestas Novus. And hey, don't worry, I actually read the entire 29-page legal founding statute so you don't have to. If you've ever wondered how an organization takes these big visionary ideas about social change and translates them into a concrete, legally binding reality, you are absolutely in the right place. Okay, let's dive into this.
To figure out how this organization actually breathes and functions out there in the real world, we're going to break down its complex legal framework into 5 simple, digestible themes: the beginning and identity, social and missionary purposes, who leads the association, the role of volunteers, and lastly, ethics, finances, and rules. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The beginning and identity, the Genesis.
So this is the literal blueprint, the officially stamped founding document from July 11, 2026. It establishes the Institute under the leadership of its founder and president, Alessandra Menezes Matias da Silva. What's really cool here is that you're witnessing the exact moment a concept turns into a legally enforceable reality. It goes from being just an idea to an official association with concrete bound goals. Right out of the gate, this paperwork defines the very soul of the Institute.
And a massive part of that identity is right there in Article 4, which defines the organization as interdenominational. Practically speaking, that means they actively bring together people from all sorts of Christian backgrounds around core shared beliefs. They aren't locked into one specific church building or denomination. It's actually a brilliant structural move because it tears down traditional walls and opens up a much wider pool for cooperation, resources, and community support.
Moving on to Section 2, Social and Missionary Purposes. The dual mandate.
The Institute is built on a really distinct dual mandate, which you'll find mapped out in Articles 7 and 8. On one hand, you've got religious purposes, think proclaiming the gospel, discipleship, and biblical counseling. But on the exact same level of importance, you have social purposes. We're talking the integral development of vulnerable youth, strict compliance with the child and adolescent statute, and real, tangible social assistance. This side-by-side structure means one mission literally cannot eclipse the other. They are legally tied to balancing their spiritual work with concrete, boots-on-the-ground action to protect vulnerable families.
And the statute brilliantly illustrates how they pull that balance off. It explicitly demands a multidisciplinary approach to their social work. So urban missionary activities aren't just one-dimensional. They integrate psychological, educational, and legal support. The organization legally binds itself to restoring dignity to marginalized folks through comprehensive professional care. It's not just about handing out a meal, right? It's about tackling the complex root causes of vulnerability with a highly structured system.
All right, Section 3. Who leads the association? Distributing power.
It is the ultimate question for literally any organization. Who actually makes the final decisions? In a complex nonprofit, knowing exactly where the ultimate authority sits is absolutely crucial for accountability. So, how exactly does the Instituto Vestas Novus distribute its power?
Well, they use a classic, super effective 3-tiered hierarchy. First up, the General Assembly. This is the sovereign body. They have the absolute final say on the biggest decisions, and they elect the leadership. Second, the Executive Board. You can think of them as the engine, managing day-to-day operations and bringing the vision to life. And third, the Fiscal Council. They act as independent watchdogs to ensure total financial integrity. This whole separation of powers is intentionally designed to stop any single person from ever having unchecked control.
Now let's look at a really pragmatic piece of this puzzle found in Article 23. Even though the organization relies heavily on volunteers, this article specifically allows for fair, market-rate remuneration, meaning pay, for dedicated executive managers. Why does that matter? Because running a high-impact NGO is exhausting, highly demanding work. By legally allowing for professional, paid daily administration, they make sure the Institute can actually attract and retain the qualified talent needed for long-term growth, rather than just crossing their fingers and hoping they can survive on people's spare time.
Which brings us to Section 4, the role of volunteers, the muscle.
The real muscle of any NGO is its volunteers, and the crucial point for this one is right here in this powerful excerpt from Article 9. It explicitly states that all missionary action has to be entirely non-coercive and deeply respectful of human dignity. Guys, this is a massive legal safeguard. It strictly outlaws any sort of manipulation or pressure tactics in their religious or social work. Volunteers are basically instructed by the organization's very DNA to lead with respect and unconditional care for the people they're serving.
And the rules for these volunteers? They are rigorous.
Just look at Article 42. Volunteers here aren't just informal helpers who randomly show up on a Saturday. They have to pass pre-profile analyses. They're legally bound to strictly follow data protection laws to safeguard the sensitive information of the communities they serve. Plus, they have to undergo mandatory training specifically focused on protecting vulnerable children. The statute treats volunteerism with the utmost professional seriousness, all to make sure the community stays safe.
Finally, we hit Section 5, Ethics, Finances, and Rules, Protecting the Mission.
Article 55 casts an incredibly wide net when it comes to financial sustainability. They are legally cleared to receive funding from a bunch of different streams. They can partner with the government for public funds, they can take private donations from individuals and partner churches, and they can even generate their own internal revenue by selling products or hosting events. Diversifying income like this, it's basically a textbook best practice to make sure the organization can weather economic storms and doesn't get overly dependent on just one big donor.
But, what happens when things inevitably go wrong internally? Articles 46 through 50 lay out a really fascinating disciplinary process. If conflicts pop up, the document mandates a restorative, step-by-step approach. Step 1 is always, peaceful dialogue and an attempt at reconciliation. If that doesn't work, it escalates to formal warnings. Only as an absolute last resort does anyone face dismissal or exclusion. It is a framework that clearly prioritizes human relationships and mediation, which lines up perfectly with their Christian and social values.
And when we're talking about the money, we have to talk about Article 57. To maintain absolute trust with the public and their donors, this article guarantees complete financial transparency. It strictly forbids any distribution of profit, surplus, or dividends to founders, directors, or volunteers. Every single cent that comes through the Institute's doors has to be entirely reinvested back into their social and religious goals. It legally cements their nonprofit status in the absolute strictest sense of the word.
So by transforming all these dense legal pages into actionable, everyday community guidelines, the Instituto Vestas Novas proves a really vital point. Passion and good intentions are fantastic, but a strong, transparent rulebook is the true foundation for creating lasting, ethical change. It protects the vulnerable, it protects the mission, and it protects the future. So as you look at the organizations shaping your own community, I want you to ask yourself, do they actually have the structural DNA to sustain their impact, or are they just running on good intentions? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.